The morning sky over New Cascadia burned with 3 suns, painting the horizon in shades of orange and gold. Commander Kate Morrison stood at the observation window of Phoenix Station, her coffee growing cold in her hand. She had been staring at the same sensor readings for 20 minutes, hoping they would change. They did not. 3 ships hung at the edge of the system, their energy signatures unlike anything in the human database. They were big, maybe twice the size of the largest Federation cruiser, and they were just sitting there waiting. Kate knew what that meant. Someone wanted to be noticed. She set down her coffee and pressed the communication button on her desk. Her voice came out steady, professional. Inside, her heart was racing. "This is Commander Morrison to all personnel. We have contact. Unknown vessels at system edge. Battle stations, but keep weapons cold. Repeat, weapons stay cold until I say otherwise." The station came alive around her. Feet pounded down corridors. Alert lights flashed from red to amber. In the control room, Lieutenant Jack Bennett slid into his chair at the tactical station, his fingers already dancing across the controls. "Getting clearer readings now," Jack said. His voice was calm, but Kate could hear the excitement underneath. 3 vessels, definitely not human design. Power signatures are massive. They are running active scans on everything in the system. Kate moved to stand behind him, watching the data scroll across his screen. New Cascadia was home to 4 million people. It had farms, factories, schools, and families. It had children playing in parks and old people sitting on porches. It was her job to keep them safe. "Send the standard greeting," she said. "All languages. And get me Governor Cruz. He needs to know about this." Down on the planet's surface, Governor Daniel Cruz was in the middle of a meeting about water distribution when his assistant burst through the door. The young man looked pale. "Governor, you need to come see this. We have visitors." Daniel stood slowly. He was 52 years old and had spent 20 years as a diplomat before becoming governor. He knew what that tone meant. He excused himself from the meeting and followed his assistant to the communication center. Kate Morrison's face filled the main screen, and Daniel could see the tension in her eyes even through the video link. "Governor, we have 3 unknown vessels at system edge. They are not responding to our greetings yet, but they are scanning everything. This looks like first contact." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Humanity had been expanding into space for 100 years and had never found anyone else. "Until now. Keep trying to reach them," he said, "and send everything to Earth, full priority. We need to let them know what is happening." The response from the alien ships came 30 minutes later. It was audio only, and the voice that spoke was smooth and cold. "We are the Valorian Collective. We wish to speak with whoever commands this system. You have 1 hour to respond." The message cut off. Kate looked at Jack, who was already working on the signal analysis. "They are speaking English," Jack said. "Perfect English, which means they have been listening to our communications for a while, maybe weeks or months." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Someone had been watching them, studying them, learning about them, and they had no idea. Dr. Lisa Chang arrived at the control room 20 minutes later. She was the chief science officer on Phoenix Station, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had spent her whole career dreaming about this moment, and now that it was here, she felt terrified and thrilled in equal measure. "Let me hear the recording," she said. Jack played the message 3 times. Lisa listened carefully, not just to the words, but to the tone, the rhythm, the tiny pauses between syllables. "They are confident," she said finally. "Maybe too confident. That tone suggests they expect us to obey without question. They see themselves as superior." Kate nodded slowly. That matched what her gut was telling her. These Valorians, whoever they were, had not come here as friends seeking equals. They had come as masters expecting servants. Governor Cruz sent his response exactly 1 hour later as requested. His message was polite but firm. "This is Governor Daniel Cruz of New Cascadia Colony, representing the United Earth Federation. We welcome peaceful contact with the Valorian Collective. We are willing to meet with your representatives to discuss matters of mutual interest." The reply came quickly this time. The alien ships began moving, accelerating toward the inner system. They would reach New Cascadia in 6 hours. Kate watched them come, tracking their progress on her screens. The ships moved fast, faster than human vessels of similar size. But it was not their speed that worried her. It was the way they moved. They did not ask permission to enter human space. They did not slow down or show any caution. They simply came, as if they owned the system already. Jack ran combat simulations while they waited. The numbers were not good. Phoenix Station could put up a fight, but against 3 ships that size, the outcome was certain. If the Valorians wanted a battle, they would win. "We need help," Jack said quietly. "We need it soon." Kate had already sent the emergency signal to Earth. The message would take hours to arrive, and help, if it came, would take days or weeks. For now, they were on their own. The Valorian ships entered orbit around New Cascadia exactly on schedule. They were beautiful in a cold, mechanical way. Their hulls were smooth and dark, covered in patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Weapons ports lined their sides more than Kate could count. One of the ships sent a shuttle down to the planet's surface. Governor Cruz met it at the main landing field, with an honor guard and news cameras recording everything. If this went badly, at least Earth would know what happened. The shuttle was smaller than a human transport, but somehow more elegant. Its doors opened with a hiss and the Valorians emerged. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Forearms moved with fluid grace, each one ending in hands with too many fingers. Their faces were almost human, but not quite. The eyes were larger, golden, and very old. The leader stepped forward. He wore robes that seemed woven from starlight, and when he spoke, his voice carried easily across the landing field. "I am Ambassador Thelrax of the Valorian Collective. I speak for the Council of 14, the rightful rulers of this region of space. You are trespassing on our territory." Daniel kept his face calm, but inside his mind was racing. Territory? The Valorians claimed to own this space? New Cascadia had been settled 40 years ago, and there had been no sign of any other intelligent life. The system had been empty. "Welcome to New Cascadia, Ambassador," Daniel said. "We had no knowledge that this system was claimed by anyone. Perhaps we can discuss this matter peacefully." Thelrax made a gesture with 2 of his hands that might have been dismissal or amusement. It was hard to tell. Ignorance is not an excuse. The Collective has ruled this sector for 2,000 of your years. That you did not know we existed simply proves your primitive nature, but we are not unreasonable. We will allow you time to consider your options. Daniel led the ambassador to the governor's residence, a simple building overlooking the capital city. Inside, they sat in his office, and Thelrax delivered his message without ceremony. Humanity had 2 choices. They could submit to the Collective and become a protectorate, giving up their independence but receiving protection and guidance, or they could withdraw from all 17 colonies in the frontier territories within 1 year. Any other response would be considered an act of war. Daniel listened carefully, asking questions, taking notes. He did not agree or refuse. He simply explained that such decisions required approval from Earth and that would take time. Thelrax seemed amused by this. "You may have 30 of your days to respond. We will remain in your system until then. Use the time wisely, Governor. The Collective does not make idle threats. We have destroyed species more advanced than yours for refusing our generous offers." That night, Kate Morrison sat in her quarters on Phoenix Station, staring at her wall screen. It showed a recording of the Valorian ships in orbit, their dark hulls reflecting the light of New Cascadia's 3 suns. Lisa Chang knocked on her door and entered without waiting for an answer. She carried a data pad and looked excited despite the grim situation. "I have been analyzing their ships," Lisa said. "Kate, their technology is impressive, but it is not as advanced as they want us to think. Those vessels use fusion drives that we stopped using 40 years ago. Their power generation is actually less efficient than ours." Kate looked up, interested. "Are you saying we could beat them?" Lisa shook her head. "Not here, not now. They still have 3 ships against our 1 station. But I am saying they are not invincible. They have been the big fish in this pond for so long that they have stopped innovating. They are coasting on old reputation and older technology." Kate felt a small spark of hope kindle in her chest. She forwarded Lisa's analysis to Earth along with everything else. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance. The message reached Earth 8 hours later. It arrived at Fleet Command in Geneva, where Admiral Helen Grant was finishing her morning briefing. When she saw the priority level, she dismissed her staff and read the report alone. First contact, hostile intentions, ultimatum delivered, military threat. Helen read through everything twice, then called an emergency meeting. The Vengeance sat in dock above Earth, 4 kilometers of steel and fury waiting to be unleashed. Captain Ryan Blake walked through the main corridor of his ship, listening to the sounds of 12,000 crew members preparing for departure. The hum of the reactor, the clang of loading equipment, the chatter of voices over communication channels. It was the sound of war being made ready. Ryan was 51 years old and had spent 30 of those years in space. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, put down rebellions on mining colonies, and defended merchant convoys from raiders. But this was different. This was first contact, and humanity needed to make an impression. Commander Nicole Hayes met him on the bridge. She was his second in command, a woman who knew every system on the ship better than the engineers who built them. She had been a test pilot before joining the Vengeance crew, and she flew the massive warship like it was a fighter craft. All departments report ready, Captain. We can depart whenever you give the order. Brian nodded and settled into his command chair. The bridge stretched out before him, filled with officers at their stations. Tactical, navigation, communications, engineering. Every person here was the best at what they did. Take us out. Set course for New Cascadia. Maximum speed. The Vengeance broke orbit smoothly, accelerating away from Earth with power that made smaller ships seem like toys. The massive engines pushed the vessel faster and faster until it reached the jump point. Then space twisted, reality bent, and the ship vanished into faster-than-light travel. Back on Earth, Director Sophie Martinez watched the departure from her office deep underground. She was the head of the Office of Strategic Intelligence, and for the past 18 months, she had been running the most important operation of her career. The Valorian Collective thought they had been watching humanity in secret. They had no idea that humans had been watching them right back. Sophie's operatives had intercepted collective communications, stolen technical data, and planted false information for the aliens to find. Every assessment the Valorians made about human military strength was based on lies that Sophie had carefully crafted. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Helen Grant. The Vengeance is away. The Valorians still have no idea what is coming. Their intelligence reports show moderate human capabilities, nothing that would threaten the collective fleet. Helen smiled on the screen. Good work, Director. When Thelrak sees the Vengeance, his whole worldview is going to collapse. Let's make sure we have forces in position to take advantage of his shock. Sophie pulled up a star map showing the frontier territories. Red icons marked Valorian positions. Blue icons showed human forces, most of them hidden or disguised. She had been moving pieces into place for weeks, waiting for this moment. I have 3 destroyer squadrons ready to deploy. 2 carrier groups are standing by in adjacent systems, and the Colossus can be at New Cascadia 3 days after the Vengeance arrives if we need the backup. The Colossus was the second Titan-class warship, sister ship to the Vengeance. Between the two of them, they represented more firepower than most species possessed in their entire navy. On New Cascadia, the situation grew worse by the day. Thelrax had stopped being polite. His ships now flew aggressive patrol patterns, cutting across civilian shipping lanes and forcing merchant vessels to change course. Valorian fighters buzzed Phoenix Station hourly, their weapons locked on but not firing. It was intimidation, pure and simple. Commander Kate Morrison filed official protests every time, and every time the ambassador dismissed them with contempt. The message was clear. The Valorians did not care about human complaints. They expected submission, and they expected it soon. Governor Daniel Cruz spent his days managing the growing panic among the colonists. People were scared. They saw alien warships in their sky and heard news reports about ultimatums and threats. Some wanted to evacuate. Others wanted to fight. Daniel tried to keep everyone calm while waiting for help that might never come. On day 15 of the crisis, Thelrax demanded another meeting. Daniel agreed, and they met in the same office as before. This time the ambassador was less patient. Your time is running out, Governor. The council grows tired of waiting. Perhaps you need a demonstration of what resistance will cost you. Daniel kept his voice steady. We are still waiting for authorization from Earth. These decisions cannot be made by one colony alone. Surely the collective understands bureaucracy and proper procedures. Thelrax made a dismissive gesture with 2 of his 4 arms. Your procedures bore me. You have 15 days remaining. If we do not have your answer by then, we will take action. Starting with your orbital station. The threat was not subtle. Phoenix Station housed 3,000 people, and its destruction would cripple the colony's defenses. Daniel knew the ambassador was serious. The Valorians had destroyed other species for less. That night, Daniel sent an urgent message to Earth. The situation was deteriorating. They needed help immediately, or New Cascadia would be forced to surrender or face annihilation. The response came within hours, faster than normal communication. It was encrypted with the highest security codes, and it contained just 3 words followed by a number. Vengeance arrives, 9 days. Daniel felt hope surge through him for the first time in weeks. He shared the message with Kate Morrison, and together they made plans. They needed to keep the Valorians occupied for 9 more days. After that, everything would change. Lieutenant Jack Bennett had a different task. While the governor stalled and the commander protested, Jack quietly upgraded the station's defenses. The work had to be done in secret, hidden from the Valorian scans. He rotated maintenance crews through the weapon systems, making small improvements that added up to significant enhancements. Dr. Lisa Chang helped by studying the aliens themselves. She watched recordings of every interaction, analyzing body language and vocal patterns. She was learning to read them to understand how they thought and what they feared. They are nervous. The ambassador especially. He talks big but watch his hands. The lower pair always clench when he makes threats. That is a stress response. He is worried about something. Kate thought about that. What could he be worried about? His ships outgun us 10-1. Lisa pulled up a chart showing Valorian scan patterns. Look at what they are scanning. Not our weapons, not our defenses. They keep scanning the jump points, watching for incoming ships. They are worried about reinforcements. I think their intelligence told them we were weak, but they are not entirely sure it was accurate. Kate leaned back in her chair, thinking. The Valorians were bullies, but they were cautious bullies. They wanted an easy victory, not a real fight. That meant they could be bluffed, at least temporarily. She had an idea. Over the next 3 days, Kate arranged for several suspicious events. A freight convoy arrived from a nearby system, its ships heavily encrypted and refusing all scans. Anonymous transmissions in military code bounced through the communication network. Phoenix Station went to high alert for 6 hours with no explanation given. The Valorians noticed everything. Their scan patterns intensified. They sent more fighters to patrol the jump points. Thelrax demanded explanations, and Governor Cruz gave vague answers about routine exercises and scheduled deliveries. It was working. The aliens were getting more cautious, more uncertain. They still believed they had the advantage, but they were no longer completely confident. And that small crack in their arrogance was exactly what Kate needed. Aboard the Vengeance, Captain Ryan Blake monitored the situation through regular updates from New Cascadia. He could see what Kate was doing, and he approved. She was buying time and creating doubt. When his ship arrived, that doubt would blossom into full-blown shock. Nicole Hayes ran constant drills with the crew. The Vengeance had to arrive ready for anything. If the Valorians decided to fight, the crew needed to respond instantly and overwhelmingly. Nicole pushed them hard, and they responded with the discipline of professionals who understood what was at stake. Ryan walked through the ship during off hours, talking to crew members, checking morale. He found them eager and confident. They knew their ship was powerful. They knew their training was superior. And they knew that humanity was depending on them to make a statement that would echo across the galaxy. In engineering, the chief engineer showed Ryan the reactor status. All systems were performing perfectly. The Vengeance could maintain maximum power output for weeks if needed. The weapons were charged and ready. The shields could withstand anything the Valorians could throw at them. She is ready, Captain. When we drop into New Cascadia, those aliens are going to wet themselves. Ryan smiled. He appreciated confidence, especially when it was justified. On day 21, with 9 days remaining until the deadline, Thelrax received a priority message from the collective. The council wanted an update. They were growing impatient with the slow progress. Some council members suggested that Thelrax was being too gentle, too willing to negotiate. Perhaps a show of force was necessary. The ambassador felt pressure from both sides now. The humans stalled while the council demanded results. His career, his reputation, everything depended on successfully intimidating this primitive species into submission. Failure was unthinkable. He decided to increase pressure on the colony. Valorian ships began. The Vengeance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at exactly 0600 hours ship time. The transition created a massive energy pulse that lit up every sensor in the New Cascadia system. On Phoenix Station, Alarms chimed softly as the computer registered the arrival of a friendly warship. Commander Kate Morrison had been awake for hours, waiting for this moment. She stood at the observation window, staring at the coordinates where the Vengeance would appear. For long seconds there was nothing. Then space itself seemed to tear open and the ship emerged. Kate had seen pictures. She had read the specifications. She had studied every detail of the Titan-class design, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of seeing one in person. The Vengeance was enormous. It stretched across her field of vision like a mountain range made of metal and weapons. The hull was dark, almost black, and covered in angular plates that made the ship look like it was carved from a single piece of stone. Weapons turrets dotted the surface, hundreds of them, each one capable of destroying a smaller vessel with a single shot. The engines glowed with barely contained power, and as Kate watched, the ship began moving toward the inner system. It moved with surprising grace for something so large, every adjustment precise and controlled. Behind her, Lieutenant Jack Bennett let out a low whistle. Holy hell. That is beautiful, Kate smiled. She had to agree. The Vengeance was more than just a warship. It was a statement. It said that humanity had arrived, and humanity was not to be underestimated. Aboard the lead Valorian cruiser, alarms were not chiming softly. They were screaming. Ambassador Thelrax rushed to the bridge, his forearms gesturing frantically as he demanded explanations from his officers. What is that thing? Where did it come from? The sensor officer looked pale, his golden eyes wide with shock. Unknown vessel, Ambassador. Human design. Mass readings are off the scale. Power output exceeds our entire flotilla combined. Weapons signatures show advanced particle beams, missile systems, and what appears to be directed energy weapons we do not recognize. Thelrax felt his stomach twist. This was not possible. Their intelligence had assured him that human military capability was moderate at best. Yes, their technology was decent, but nothing that would threaten the collective. Yet here was a ship that dwarfed his cruisers and outgunned them by an unthinkable margin. Get me a visual. The main screen flickered to life, showing the Vengeance in all its terrible glory. Thelrax stared at it, and for the first time in his long career he felt genuine fear. This was not a ship built for exploration or trade. This was a weapon, pure and simple, a weapon designed to destroy anything that stood in its way. He forced himself to think clearly. One ship, even a ship that powerful, could not defeat 3 Valorian cruisers. Not if they worked together, not if they used proper tactics. But even as he thought it, he knew he was lying to himself. That ship could take them apart, and everyone on the bridge knew it. Contact the human commander. I want to speak with whoever is in charge of that vessel. On the Vengeance, Captain Ryan Blake sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The Valorian ships were scrambling, repositioning into defensive formations. Their weapons were powering up, but they were not aiming. Not yet. They were scared, and scared people made mistakes. Commander Nicole Hayes stood at his shoulder, monitoring the ship's systems. Everything was running perfectly. The reactor was stable. Weapons were charged. Shields were at maximum. They were ready for anything. Captain, we are receiving a communication request from the lead Valorian cruiser. Audio only. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. Put it through. Let them see our bridge while we talk. Full visual on our end. The communication opened and Ambassador Thelrax appeared on the screen. The alien looked composed, but Ryan had been reading people for 30 years. He could see the tension in those forearms, the tightness around the eyes. The ambassador was trying to hide his fear and doing a poor job of it. I am Ambassador Thelrax of the Valorian Collective. Identify yourself and state your purpose in this system. Ryan kept his face neutral and his voice calm. Captain Ryan Blake, commanding the United Earth Federation warship Vengeance. I am here at the request of Governor Cruz to participate in the ongoing negotiations regarding the future of New Cascadia Colony. I understand you have been discussing matters with the governor for some time now. Thelrax tried to regain his earlier arrogance, but it rang hollow now. Your intelligence failed to mention vessels of this class. How many such ships does humanity possess? Ryan smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. Enough, Ambassador. More than enough. Now, shall we continue this conversation face to face? I believe Governor Cruz has arranged a meeting. I look forward to discussing the terms of your withdrawal from this system. The screen went blank as Thelrax cut the connection. Ryan could imagine the panic on the alien bridge right now. They had come here expecting to intimidate primitives, and instead they found themselves staring at a warship that could turn their cruisers into scrap metal. Nicole checked her sensors and reported quietly. The Valorian ships are pulling back to high orbit. Weapons still hot, but they are not taking aggressive positions. I think they are waiting for orders from their superiors. Ryan nodded. That was exactly what he wanted. Let them wait. Let them worry. Let them realize that every assumption they had made about humanity was wrong. Take us into orbit above New Cascadia. Standard approach, but show them our full weapons array as we come in. I want them counting every gun we have. The Vengeance moved through the system like a predator stalking prey. Every movement was calculated to demonstrate capability. When it turned, the massive engines showed their power. When it adjusted course, the precision of the maneuver was perfect. And as it approached the planet, weapons ports opened in sequence, revealing the devastating arsenal hidden beneath the armored hull. Down on New Cascadia, people flooded into the streets to watch. The Vengeance was visible now, a dark shape against the stars that grew larger with each passing minute. News broadcasts showed images of the warship from every angle, and reporters struggled to find words adequate to describe what they were seeing. Governor Daniel Cruz stood on the balcony of his residence, watching the ship approach. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had not even realized he was carrying. Help had arrived. Real, substantial, overwhelming help. The Valorians could no longer threaten his people without facing consequences they could not afford. Dr. Lisa Chang was at Phoenix Station, recording every bit of data she could capture about the Vengeance. The ship was a marvel of engineering, but what interested her more was the Valorian reaction to it. She had been right about their nervousness. Now that nervousness had turned to outright alarm. She pulled up the recordings of the Valorian ship movements and noticed something interesting. After the Vengeance arrived, the alien vessels had moved into what looked like a defensive formation. But it was not a good defensive formation. It was hasty, improvised, the kind of thing you did when you were panicking and did not have time to think clearly. Lisa shared her observations with Commander Morrison. They are completely off balance. I do not think they have faced a real military threat in a very long time. They are used to showing up and having everyone surrender immediately. This is new territory for them. Kate studied the data and nodded slowly, which makes them dangerous. Scared people do stupid things. We need to be ready in case they decide to go down fighting. The Vengeance settled into orbit, taking up a position that gave it clear firing lanes on all three Valorian cruisers, while also protecting Phoenix Station. Captain Blake sent a formal greeting to Commander Morrison, congratulating her on holding the situation together during the crisis. Kate responded with genuine gratitude. She invited Captain Blake to visit Phoenix Station when time permitted, and Ryan accepted. But first there was a meeting to attend. Governor Cruz had arranged for the meeting to take place on neutral ground, in a conference facility on the planet's surface. Both delegations would arrive simultaneously, and security would be provided by local forces rather than either military. Ryan brought a small team with him. Commander Hayes, naturally, a security detail of 6 Marines in dress uniforms, and a diplomat from Earth who had arrived aboard the Vengeance. A woman named Patricia Sullivan, who specialized in first contact situations. Ambassador Thelrax arrived with his own delegation, looking considerably less confident than he had at their first meeting. The alien's robe seemed less bright somehow, and his golden eyes kept drifting to Captain Blake with barely concealed anxiety. They gathered in a large conference room with windows overlooking the city. Governor Cruz made brief introductions and everyone took their seats. The atmosphere was tense, electric with unspoken threats and possibilities. Ryan let Patricia take the lead. She was better at this diplomatic dance than he was, but he sat where the Valorians could see him clearly, a constant reminder of the military power that humanity could deploy if necessary. Patricia opened with carefully neutral language. Ambassador Thelrax, we understand that there has been some confusion regarding the status of the frontier territories. The United Earth Federation wishes to clarify its position and hopefully resolve this matter peacefully. The response from the Valorian collective took 3 days to arrive. 3 tense days during which the human and alien fleets maintained their positions. watching each other across the void of space. Captain Ryan Blake used the time well, conducting training, exercises that showcase the Vengeance's capabilities while maintaining what he called a defensive posture. The exercises were carefully designed to demonstrate power without appearing aggressive. The Vengeance would accelerate to maximum velocity, then stop on a mark with precision that made smaller ships look clumsy. It would execute combat maneuvers that showcased impossible agility for a vessel of its size. And it would fire its weapons at remote targets, vaporizing asteroids and derelict satellites with casual ease. Ambassador Thelrax watched every exercise from his command ship, and each demonstration drove home the same message. Humanity had been holding back. The Valorians had never seen the full extent of human military capability, and what they were seeing now was probably still just a fraction of what Earth could deploy. On the third day, a message arrived from the Collective Council. Thelrax read it alone in his quarters, and his hands trembled as he absorbed the contents. The Council was not pleased. They were angry about the intelligence failure, furious about the humiliation of having their threats dismissed, and deeply concerned about the implications of a powerful human military. But they were also pragmatic. The Council had not maintained power for 2,000 years by being stupid. They recognized that the situation had changed, that humanity was not the easy target they had assumed. The message gave Thelrax limited authority to negotiate, but it also included a warning. If negotiations failed, reinforcements would arrive, and the Collective would demonstrate its full military might. Thelrax read that last part twice, and a cold feeling settled in his stomach. Reinforcements meant a fleet, possibly dozens of ships. The Council was preparing for war, even as they authorized him to seek peace. It was a gamble, and everyone involved knew it. He contacted Governor Cruz and requested another meeting. This time, the ambassador's tone was noticeably different. Gone was the arrogance and condescension. Instead, his words carried a careful neutrality that suggested he was ready to negotiate in earnest. The meeting convened in the same conference room as before. Captain Blake and Patricia Sullivan represented Earth, along with Governor Cruz. Ambassador Thelrax brought his senior military advisor, Admiral Korthun, a grizzled veteran who looked like he had seen too many battles. Thelrax began with an acknowledgement that must have cost him dearly. It appears that our intelligence regarding human capabilities was incomplete. The Collective Council recognizes that the situation is more complex than initially assessed. We are prepared to discuss a mutual arrangement regarding territorial boundaries and future relations. Patricia Sullivan nodded graciously. We appreciate the ambassador's candor. The United Earth Federation has always preferred diplomatic solutions over military confrontation. We believe that both our species can benefit from peaceful coexistence and cooperation. What followed was hours of careful negotiation. Patricia proved to be a master diplomat, knowing exactly when to push and when to compromise. The basic framework emerged slowly. Humanity would retain all 17 colonies it had established. In return, Earth would recognize collective sovereignty over a defined region of space, and both parties would establish a neutral buffer zone between their territories. Trade agreements were discussed. Cultural exchange programs, protocols for handling disputes, establishment of embassies. The details were complex and both sides haggled over specific terms, but the overall direction was clear. They were moving toward peace. Admiral Korthun spoke up during a discussion of military matters. The old warrior had been quiet until now, but when he spoke, his voice carried weight. Captain Blake, may I speak candidly? Ryan nodded. Of course. Admiral Korthun leaned forward, his expression serious. I have served the Collective for 70 of your years. I have fought in 3 major campaigns and countless smaller conflicts. In all that time, I have never seen a warship like yours. The Vengeance represents a level of military engineering that we have not achieved. My question is simple. How many such vessels does Earth possess? Ryan considered his answer carefully. Honesty would serve better than deception here. 3 Titan-class warships are currently operational. A 4th is under construction. But you should understand, Admiral, that these vessels represent just one component of Earth's military capability. We have carrier groups, destroyer squadrons, defense platforms, and weapons systems that we have not yet displayed. Korthun absorbed this information, then nodded slowly. I appreciate your honesty, Captain. It confirms what I suspected. The collective has grown complacent in its dominance. We have not faced a peer adversary in centuries, and it shows in our technology, our tactics, our readiness. This encounter has been educational, if somewhat humbling. Thelrax looked uncomfortable with his admiral's frank assessment, but he did not contradict him. Everyone in the room understood the truth. The Valorians had been operating on reputation and past glory, while humanity had been innovating and improving. The balance of power had shifted without the collective even realizing it. But back on Earth, Director Sophie Martinez was tracking developments that complicated the situation. Her intelligence network had intercepted collective military communications. The Council had indeed ordered reinforcements, and those forces were already in motion. A battle fleet of 37 vessels was en route to New Cascadia, expected to arrive in 18 days. Sophie contacted Admiral Helen Grant immediately. We have a problem. The collective is sending a fleet. They are negotiating with one hand while preparing for war with the other. Helen studied the intelligence reports with a frown. Typical Empire behavior. They want to negotiate from a position of strength. Well, two can play that game. Deploy our forces. I want the Colossus at New Cascadia within 72 hours. Position the carrier groups and destroyer squadrons along likely approach vectors. When that Valorian fleet arrives, I want them to find a reception committee they never expected. Sophie smiled. She loved it when a plan came together. Already in motion, Admiral. By the time the collective fleet arrives, we will have such overwhelming force in the region that they will have no choice but to negotiate seriously. Over the next week, human forces began appearing throughout the frontier territories. The movements were coordinated and precise, ships arriving from different directions and taking up strategic positions. The Valorians noticed, of course. Their sensors tracked every ship, and their intelligence officers worked overtime trying to assess the full scope of human military deployment. The Colossus arrived on schedule, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with the same dramatic energy signature that had announced the vengeance. The second Titan-class warship took up position opposite its sister ship, and together they formed a defensive barrier that protected New Cascadia from any conceivable threat. Ambassador Thelrax watched the Colossus arrive and felt his last hopes of military superiority crumble. Two of those monsters, and the humans claimed they had a third, plus one under construction. The collective had nothing that could match even one Titan-class warship. Fighting two would be suicide. He requested an emergency communication with the Council, and this time his tone was urgent. They needed to understand what they were facing. The human military was not just powerful, it was positioned and ready. If the collective fleet arrived looking for a fight, they would find themselves outnumbered and outgunned despite their numerical advantage. The Council's response was terse. Proceed with negotiations. The fleet would still arrive as planned, but its mission parameters were changed. Instead of preparing for offensive action, the fleet would serve as a show of force during final negotiations. The message was clear. The Council was backing down but trying to save face. Ryan Blake received reports of the incoming collective fleet and made his own preparations. Additional human forces continued to arrive, taking up positions throughout the system. By the time the Valorian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they found themselves facing a human armada that matched their numbers and exceeded their capabilities. 2 Titan-class warships. 4 carrier groups, each one accompanied by a dozen support vessels, 6 destroyer squadrons, dozens of frigates, corvettes, and support ships. The human fleet was impressive not just in size but in the obvious quality and readiness of every vessel. The Valorian fleet commander, an admiral named Talvin, surveyed the human forces with growing dismay. His intelligence briefings had mentioned some human reinforcements, but this was far beyond what he had expected. Every simulation he ran ended the same way. If fighting started, his fleet would be destroyed, possibly without inflicting significant damage on the enemy. Talvin contacted Ambassador Thelrax immediately. Ambassador, I must report that the tactical situation is untenable. The human fleet is positioned to destroy us if hostilities commence. I strongly recommend that we focus all efforts on diplomatic resolution. Thelrax could only agree. He had been trying to tell the Council this for days, but perhaps hearing it from a respected fleet commander would carry more weight. The signing ceremony took place in the central plaza of New Cascadia's capital city. Thousands of colonists gathered to watch history being made, while billions more across human and Valorian space followed the broadcast. The plaza had been decorated with flags representing both civilizations, and a stage had been constructed where the historic documents would be signed. Governor Daniel Cruz opened the ceremony with a speech that struck exactly the right tone. He acknowledged the tension and fear of recent weeks while celebrating the peaceful resolution. He spoke of the challenges ahead, the work that both species would need to do to build genuine understanding and cooperation. And he expressed hope that this day would mark the beginning of a lasting friendship between humanity and the Valorian collective. Admiral Helen Grant spoke next, representing Earth's military. She was brief and direct as suited her nature. She thanked the men and women who had stood ready to defend New Cascadia, praised the wisdom that had led to diplomatic resolution, and promised that Earth would always protect its people and honor its commitments. Then Ambassador Thelrax took the stage. The alien diplomat had prepared his remarks carefully, and when he spoke, his words carried genuine emotion. He acknowledged that the collective had made mistakes, that their initial approach had been wrong. He praised humanity for demonstrating both strength and mercy, for seeking peace even when they held military advantage. The collective learns slowly, but we do learn. Humanity has taught us important lessons about humility, about respect, about the value of negotiation over confrontation. We enter this agreement not as masters dictating terms to subjects, but as equals seeking mutual benefit. May this day be remembered as the moment when two great civilizations chose cooperation over conflict. The crowd applauded, humans and the few Valorians present joining together. It was a small gesture but meaningful. These species had stood on the brink of war, and now they were applauding together, celebrating peace. The actual signing took place at a table on the center of the stage. Admiral Grant signed for humanity, her signature bold and clear. A senior member of the Valorian Council signed for the collective, marking the document with an intricate symbol that represented authority. Governor Cruz and Ambassador Thelrax added their signatures as witnesses, and Captain Ryan Blake stood behind them as the military representative who had made this moment possible. When the signing was complete, the crowd erupted in cheers. Music played, combining human and Valorian styles in a fusion that somehow worked. People danced in the streets, celebrating not just peace but the opening of a new chapter in galactic history. Dr. Lisa Chang gave her presentation on human culture in the afternoon, speaking to a mixed audience of humans and Valorians. She showed them art and music, literature and film, cuisine and architecture. She explained human values like individual freedom and collective responsibility, concepts that did not translate perfectly into Valorian culture, but could be understood with effort. The Valorian attendees listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed they were trying to understand rather than simply judge. Lisa found herself enjoying the exchange, the intellectual challenge of explaining her species to aliens who saw the world so differently. Lieutenant Jack Bennett commanded the Joint Honor Guard during the evening reception. His unit performed a precision drill that showcased both human and Valorian military traditions, moving in perfect synchronization despite the differences in their physiology. The performance earned applause from everyone present, including the military officers from both species who understood how difficult such coordination was. As night fell over New Cascadia, informal gatherings began throughout the city. Human officers met with their Valorian counterparts, sharing stories and comparing experiences. Scientists from both species discussed potential research collaborations. Merchants explored trade opportunities, and ordinary people simply talked, getting to know each other as individuals rather than representatives of their civilizations. Commander Kate Morrison found herself in conversation with Admiral Corthune, the veteran Valorian officer who had been so frank about his fleet's limitations. They talked about tactics and strategy, about the challenges of commanding in space, about the weight of responsibility that came with military leadership. "You impressed me, Commander. Your defense station was well prepared, and you kept your people calm during a very frightening situation. Those are the marks of a good officer." Kate felt genuine respect for the old warrior. "Thank you, Admiral. I learned a great deal from watching your ships. Your formations were disciplined, and your crews were professional. I hope we can learn from each other in the future." Korthun made a gesture with his upper arms that Kate had learned meant agreement. That is my hope as well. The collective has much to learn from humanity, and perhaps we have some knowledge to share in return. The galaxy is large, Commander. There is room for both our species to thrive, and we will be stronger together than apart. Captain Ryan Blake spent the evening in quieter company, meeting with small groups of officers and officials from both species. He answered questions about the Vengeance, carefully revealing some information while keeping other details classified. He listened to Valorian officers describe their own vessels and tactics, making mental notes of strengths and weaknesses that might be useful in the future. But mostly, he observed. He watched humans and Valorians interacting, saw the initial awkwardness giving way to genuine curiosity and tentative friendship. He saw the potential for real cooperation between these species, but he also saw the challenges that would need to be overcome. Commander Nicole Hayes found him later in the evening, standing on a balcony overlooking the plaza where the ceremony had taken place. "Penny, for your thoughts." Captain Ryan smiled slightly. "Just thinking about what comes next. We have signed a treaty, and that is important. But treaties are just pieces of paper. The real work begins now. Building genuine relationships, establishing trust, learning to cooperate despite our differences." Nicole leaned against the railing beside him. "We will figure it out. Humanity has always been good at adapting, at finding common ground with unlikely partners. Give it time, Captain. In 20 years, people will look back on this week and barely remember how close we came to war. They will just know that humans and Valorians are allies." Ryan hoped she was right, but he also knew that peace was fragile, that it required constant effort to maintain. The Vengeance would remain at New Cascadia for another month, a visible reminder of human military capability, and a deterrent against anyone who might think humanity could be pushed around. 6 months passed. The treaty held, and slowly, cautiously, humans and Valorians began to build real relationships. The first embassy opened on Earth, staffed by Valorian diplomats who were genuinely interested in learning about human culture. A reciprocal embassy was established on the Valorian homeworld, where human diplomats navigated the complex politics of the collective. Trade began flowing between the two civilizations. Human-manufactured goods, particularly advanced electronics and medical equipment, found eager markets in collective space. Valorian art and luxury items became fashionable on Earth. Scientists from both species began collaborative research projects, sharing knowledge and techniques. Admiral Helen Grant oversaw the expansion of Earth's military, recognizing that the galaxy was more dangerous and complex than humanity had previously understood. The fourth Titan-class warship, christened the Invincible, was completed ahead of schedule. Plans were drawn up for 3 more. Destroyer production increased and new weapon systems were developed. But alongside the military expansion, Earth also invested heavily in diplomatic capabilities. The Office of Strategic Intelligence, under Director Sophie Martinez's leadership, evolved from a pure intelligence agency into something more nuanced, balancing information gathering with relationship building. Sophie herself became an advocate for understanding other species, not just spying on them. The Valorian collective underwent its own transformation. The confrontation with humanity had exposed weaknesses that could no longer be ignored. The Council authorized massive investments in military modernization. New ship designs were developed, incorporating lessons learned from studying human vessels. Training protocols were updated. The entire military was restructured to be more flexible and capable, but more importantly, the collective began to change its approach to other species. The arrogant assumption that all lesser species should submit to their authority was challenged and slowly abandoned. Younger Valorians, especially those who had interacted with humans, pushed for reform. They argued that the galaxy was changing, that cooperation was more valuable than domination. Ambassador Thelrax became an unexpected champion of this reform movement. His honest reporting of the New Cascadia crisis had earned him respect rather than punishment, and he was promoted to a senior position in the diplomatic corps. He used his influence to advocate for treating other species as potential partners, rather than subjects to be conquered. 1 year after the signing ceremony, a joint human-Valorian scientific mission set out to explore a region of space that neither civilization had previously visited. The expedition included ships from both species,